All right, guys. We're going to get started here with our presentation. Here in a second, I'm going to go back in the back and drive what Lindsay's going to talk about. We're getting back to the basics in our first boot camp here. This boot camp is going to take us all the way through, adding a new hire, through understanding what the tabs are and what you can do with them, how to do certain situations when an employee has an issue. The main part of this programming and why we were so excited to put this on, and actually seeing more people over here than over there, is making this more interactive. If you have a question, literally shout it out. We want to be interactive. We want to make sure we're getting your questions answered today. That's the point of today. So please speak up, ask a question. If any of you have sat with me in a meeting prior, I always say no question's a dumb question. That's because I ask a lot of those dumb questions for you. So just keep asking away anytime you have a question. Lindsay, I know a lot of you have heard us talk about Lindsay, but Lindsay is our lead case builder at Steel Benefits. She is amazing. She's the one that makes your computer dance. So I'm happy to turn over the mic to her to walk us through this. I'll be in the back again driving. So if she says, hey, Mike, move it to this place, that's me. I'm in the back. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I recognize a lot of your names across here. I may not have seen your faces. Definitely recognize your case, and I can probably tell you, oh yeah, I know you have this going on your case. So definitely I've had a lot of you come across my desk. So if you guys have any questions throughout this, definitely let us know. One thing that I will say before you get started is a lot of you guys are in the same industry. We have a lot of municipalities, schools, manufacturing. And on my end, I see a lot of trends across those. So if you have a question and you're from a manufacturer or from a school, that there's more than likely somebody else that has the same situation going on at their school or a similar situation. So if you have a question, definitely ask it while you guys are here. One thing that you guys got today was the Steel user guide. So we have revamped our user guide. Basically with our new logo, we took a lot of updated screenshots, and we took some time to add some more directions in here. 5 years ago when I originally did this, it was like, if you go to this screen, click here, and like everybody would know what to do next, but like, how would you know that? So we added some additional notes in here for you guys. But essentially from start to finish, the process has not changed. Celeric still operates the same as it did. It's, a little bit more updates on the front end and how it looks. But as far as clicking here, you still click this button to get that job done. So definitely a lot of information in here. Definitely very useful for you guys. If you have questions on how to do a specific life event, which we'll go into later on. But I know a lot of times you may not use every aspect of the system on a day-to-day basis, but if you ever need to reference it or do something that maybe haven't done in a while, this will be a great tool for you guys. So first thing we'll start with is just going over adding a new hire. So you guys all know how to add a new hire. We have the instructions in here on how to do it. But I just want to kind of give you guys a couple reminders of what doing certain things does and what setting up a new hire does in the system for you. So obviously you go through, enter all the information. If it is bold, then that means it's a required field. If not, then you can choose to fill it out or not. So basically what you're doing here is entering the employee's personal information, but you're also establishing an employment profile for them that is in turn going to be read by the system to know what benefits they should be enrolled in, what they should see, what rates they should pay, et cetera. So this is where we're setting all this up. So this is why it's really important to make sure that you do select the correct job class, that you do put their correct hours in, so that way they can see all of the benefits, and that you do put their correct salary in. One thing that I will say, this is a trend among schools. A lot of times we see where schools put in just the partial salary of what they're going to work when they're there for, let's say, 3 months out of the year. And then the next year they would get their full salary. Well, if you want to enroll them in their long-term disability and you need to have the correct premium to send in your self-bill, then you got to enter the full salary. So it knows how much it should be deducting for them, or inverse what your self-bill should say on there. So this is definitely going to set up exactly what's going to happen next. Any questions about adding a new hire? Excellent. Blink if you want to take us to our employees so we can review some things. Let's see, we are, if you guys want to look on in your user guide, if you want to take any notes on page 19, that's going to start the employee record portion. I'm going to kind of skip around where these are in. We're going to touch on most of them, but definitely you can flip through here and add any notes that you need to. So we just picked an employee that we have already in the system. So when you enter an employee, then establishes their employment profile. As the employee is in the system more and more, goes through more and more enrollments, then you'll see that they have a lot more information on different tabs. So as we discussed on here, you can see their job class, hours, salary, anything like that. So if an employee comes back to you and says, hey, I tried to log in, but it's telling me that I can't enroll in any benefits because I don't work enough hours. Well, if it said 0 hours here, then you would see, oh, yep, we got to add that for you. And then immediately they could go in and enroll. One thing that I do want to touch on, sometimes when you're adding new hires, we make some mistakes and maybe we enter a wrong birthday or wrong social. So we know that when they enter their PIN, it's the last 4 of their social and last 2 of their birth year. So let's say that you've fumbled 2 numbers and need to switch it. So you switched it. But what happens is that does not automatically update their PIN. Their PIN is still the original information that you put in there. Right on the home screen here, where it says change credentials, you can click on that and it'll allow you to change their PIN and you can type in the correct last 4 and last 2 of birth year. We have a couple groups that they have specific pins that they set for their employee. I definitely want to get into the habit of letting your employee call you and say, hey, can you set it to this? Because they're never going to remember that. And they're going to be calling you every year during open enrollment, say, hey, can you reset my pin for me? So if you have a mistake on there, then that's definitely where you can change that at. Next thing I want to talk about is the hire date and eligibility date. So the hire date is the date that they are hired. Their eligibility date in the system always defaults to that date until something changes on their employment record. Their eligibility date is the date that the system uses in order to know how long do they have to wait before their benefits are effective. When are those benefits effective? So this date is what everything is calculated off of. So if you're at your location, it's supposed to be first of the month following 30 days. We have a lot of time, newer users, they want to put the effective date in there. So they want to put August 1st as the date that they should be putting in that eligibility date. And then when they have the employee go through and enroll, now their benefits aren't effective till 9/1. And they're like, hey, what's going on? Why isn't this working? From our standpoint, this should always just be left alone because this is what the system is going to use to drive everything. And then as you move along, you may see where you have employees that their eligibility date doesn't match their hire date. Well, if I start off as a part-time person, I'm entered as a part-time person, and then 6 months later, I have a job class change. Now, due to that job class change, I've become eligible for new benefits. And so the system is going to update my eligibility date because there's a new window of opportunity for me to enroll. So that will change. And the system will then react off that and know what it needs to do based on that. Eligibility date, another thing I like to point out is if you have a 30-day grace period, say 30 days from their date of hire to log in and enroll, that date starts on the date of hire. That is considered day 1, not the next date. So a lot of times we have where we're 1 day late and we're trying to figure it out. So just remember that first date is the very first date that they can go in and enroll in benefits. Any questions about either of those? Excellent. All right, so after an employee enrolls or after they go through the system, it starts to save information on various tabs. So first thing, beneficiaries tab. When you go here, it's going to show you what their beneficiaries are by plan that they've elected. So maybe they elect something specific for the basic life, but for their voluntary life, they've elected something totally different. That's going to show that here for you. Maybe. In your user guide, there should be a screenshot of the beneficiaries tab on page 20. So you guys can see that. Does anybody have a question about that? So this update, so, employees can go in the system at any time and update their beneficiaries if they so choose. So this would just be the most up-to-date And it's also shown on their confirmation statement when they sign off on that. Oh, there we go. Next tab. So our contact tab. This is going to be all the employees' contact information. Some of you guys have where this is locked, where you don't want them to be able to go in here because you want to maintain everything in payroll and you want it to go there first and then to be fed over there. If they're going into Solarix only and they're not telling you, then that's not really helping you to know where to mail their stuff at or, or anything like that. So it's kind of 50-50 on here. If you guys have questions about the contact tab and what you can and can't control and allow them to make changes to, then definitely reach out to your CSM and we can go over that with you. Like we'll be here forever if we wait for all these tabs. Let's go to the coverage tab. And if I need to touch on a couple first, let's see if we can get that one to load. We'll see what comes up here. I guess we'll use the user guide. If you guys want to flip over to page 22, the coverage tab. So this is going to be where we have all of their coverage, all of their active coverages are going to show for you. So after they go through an enrollment, they sign off on a form, all their coverages are going to list here. There's a checkbox at the top you can click that says show coverage history. So if you check that, every single line of coverage that they have had in our system will be there for you to see. Okay, in 2016, they had employee only, then they got married, then they went from here to here, and it's going to show all those active lines of coverage for you to see. It's going to show the effective date, deduction date, what the premium is. It's going to have all of that information there for you. Trying to think. I was going to add a couple more things here. I guess this is something that maybe you guys see a lot of. Sometimes you say, you see their confirmation statement says one thing, but the coverage tab says another thing, right? Well, how come the rate says this versus this? We have the ability to go in, maybe during open enrollment, you thought that the rate was approved for an increase for this or that or whatever, but it wasn't, like your basic life or something like that. So everybody enrolled in the basic life, and it may not be something that they're paying for, but maybe it was $4.77 on the system, but you went back and they said, oh, nope, they're going to keep our rate. It's $4.25. But you still have to run self bills for the whole year. So you don't want that to be wrong, right? Obviously, it's going to make a big difference. So we have the ability to go in on the back end and update some of that information for you, especially if it's done in masses. If you have approved medical rate that was approved later on or halfway through the enrollment or this or that, we can go ahead and load some stuff on the back end for you. But more times than not, the coverage tab should match exactly what the employee signed off on. So the latest form on the forms tab for their benefit confirmation should match the latest effective dates that you would see on here. Going over coverage specifically. So there's a pencil that you guys can take a look at and see what's going on their coverage tab. If you needed to make an update to their rate, maybe the rounding was a little bit off. And instead of 23 cents, you wanted to say 24 cents on this one employee. You can go in and make adjustments there. If you need to look at different portions on here, as far as individuals covered, one big thing that we'll go over, we get to the demographics tab, just because a dependent is listed on the demographics tab does not mean that they are covered on the medical insurance or dental insurance. A great example will be when you have split households and there's agreements where the ex-husband may be covering medical one year, but then next year it's your turn to cover. So you may have where you have different kids on there. There may be student status where you have kids that have to be a student in order to be enrolled in the dental coverage. So the individual covered tab is going to be where you're going to see on the medical coverage who is specifically listed as being enrolled on that coverage. And so that's where you can take a look at that. One very important thing, you should never go here and you should never X anybody out. What that does is that drops them from the coverage, but it never tells the carrier that. So that can create an issue. Mike Blink, if you have questions, he will definitely tell you some stories about that. But if you needed to add somebody or remove somebody, you would just do a life event to properly do that. That way we could feed that over to the carrier correctly. Any questions? All right. Sure.
If you do that, make sure, it's kind of hard for me to explain. Tomorrow might be payroll for everyone, right? So tomorrow, Friday's payroll. If you're doing an event today that's terming coverage on the coverage tab using the pencil, make sure you're not putting tomorrow's in the deduction date, because that change file for your payroll person has already been sent to them. Make sure you realize as an HR user that when you're entering in a term date for a benefit, that you're using the next in deduction date that's available. That will help all the payroll people that are in the room right now make their lives a little easier for their payroll change files. Does that make sense?
Does anybody have any questions about that? Next tab, the custom tab. Basically, the custom tab displays any custom fields that you've asked to have put in the case. If you do ACA reporting with us, then you automatically have the ACA custom tab or custom field in there where we ask the employee if they want to electronically receive their 1095-C form. But a lot of you may have a spousal carve out where you ask if their spouse has a job. You may have, where if maybe does your spouse work here? Because if both spouse or both employees, if they're married, maybe they get a discount. So there could be a lot of different examples of what a custom field could be. Sometimes we use custom fields that we only use for reporting. Maybe it doesn't have to do with the question. Maybe you need to have a specific account number on each employee's tab. That way, you know which, which self-bill account to pull from. So that way you can pay their self-bill if there's different funds that you use to pay different things for. Any questions about custom fields? If you have an idea about a custom field or think that something would be easier if it was housed on our system, then definitely reach out to your CSM and we can talk about that for sure. Communication tab, formerly known as the notes tab. I have said this every year I've done a user meeting. This is my favorite tab and most underutilized tab. This can be used by anybody that is HR, anybody that has access to the admin side. Basically what you can do is you can add notes here, add documents here, and you can save them and it will timestamp them and other people could see those as well. So specifically if there's, let's say 3 or 4 of you that access the system and somebody called and they want to enroll their spouse in benefits, but they don't have any reason to, they don't have a qualifying life event, they just want to do it. So they call you and you tell them, hey, unfortunately, you'll have to wait till the next open enrollment. You could put a note here that says, spoke with so-and-so at this time and told them they weren't able to enroll. That way, when they call and somebody else answers the phone and they ask the same question, then they can look in there and say, well, it looks like you spoke with so-and-so and they advise you that you are unable to do that. So, unfortunately, you aren't gonna be able to do that at this time. You can upload documents if you have specific documents that employees bring you that you need to house them electronically. You can load them up to the employee record. Yeah, really anything on here you can put notes. Even if an employee had a question about, about their medical coverage or about this, you can say, told them where they could find all the information, told them that they could reach out to so-and-so. But you can house those notes there and they'll be timestamped for you and you can see those. The employee will never see those. That would be just on the admin side that those would be seen. Any questions? They are tied to the employee record. So you could find any employee, have any notes and add that to that. How many people are utilizing the communication tab? All right, but now you guys know, right? Next tab, demographics. So this is where we're gonna house all of our dependents that we've entered into the system. And like I said, just because someone is listed here doesn't necessarily mean that they are covered on insurance. They could have kids that come on and off dental every other year or something like that. You could have stepchildren listed here. There's a lot of different dependents that be here. You may have a dependent that ages off and they're still listed there. Well, yeah, they're 26, so they're not on the coverage, but we're still gonna have them there for now. Any questions? I think that's our hot topics one, Blink. All right. Forms tab. This is where it's gonna house any of the forms specific to the employee record that they've signed off on. So their enrollment confirmation, the 1095C forms will be housed here. And each time that they sign a new form, it's going to keep record of the old one, but it's gonna mark that out. So only the newest, most up-to-date form is gonna be there for you. And the form has a lot of information on it too. I don't know if a lot of you guys have looked at them, but it actually shows on there all their beneficiaries, all their dependents listed in the system, and it also notes what coverages those dependents are covered on. So you can see that there as well. So you can see your dependent information and your beneficiary information there. Any questions? Excellent. You guys are making this so easy. Then we're back to our employment tab. So now our events history tab. So this tells us from the time that they are added, anything that's done on that employee record will be housed here. Whether they had a job class change, whether they got married, whether they went through the enrollment or they were auto-enrolled. Maybe we changed a custom field for them. But everything's going to be here for you. So that way you can see what's going on. I use this a lot to see what's going on, to kind of see if you guys are having an issue. I can go through here and see, okay, what are the events that have occurred? Let's try to figure out what's going on. Any questions about that? Excellent. Work history. So the work history basically is, in my opinion, the same as events history, but it takes work related or work specific events and it moves those over just to there for you. So if you needed to see those for any reason, then you could just see, okay, here's what's happened. They changed hours, hours went up, hours went down, moved job classes, etc. And then the pay history tab, some of you use it, some of you don't. Basically what that does is we can load what you call it, payroll information, Wes, or?
We can load pay and hours information
Yeah.
in the pay history tab for the purpose of managing look back reporting, which helps to determine who your full-time employees are. However, that's a task that's generally better done through your payroll system. And the only reason that we would help you with that is if your payroll system can't give you what you need regarding defining who your full-time employees are.
All right. Let me just double check my notes here, make sure there wasn't anything that I missed. We went through the stop deduction date, right? Next thing we'll go over is the admin site versus the employee site. So you guys are all aware of the difference between the two. It's like you log in as yourself on the admin site, but then the employee goes in. And as soon as you click enroll on an employee, you're now entering the site as them. So you're seeing what they would see. And when you get to the end of that, if you're logged in as the admin, then you can use either your password or the employee's PIN to sign off on anything that you're doing for them. I don't know how much time I have left.
What?
A lot,
Yeah.
10 minutes. Good. Well, you guys are going to have lots of questions, I'm sure. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is fairly new, is the new verification process. You guys probably have seen it. When you log in, it wants to, it asks you, do you want us to send an email here so you can get a verification code? That way you can move forward. So that's a new security feature that's pretty recent. If you are having any trouble with that, I believe that anytime that you haven't logged in, every 30 days, it asks you for the verification again. And I believe every time that you possibly have a new IP address, it'll trigger it. So all you have to do is just check the box and have it send you an email. And then when you get that verification code, enter that verification code in. And then there's a box that says, don't ask me again for 30 days. Make sure you check that box. That way you don't have to do that every single day. And if you would like to have your information added, maybe a cell phone number where it's easier if it just texts you a verification code, then just get with your CSM and we can update that information for you or add that in if you want additional ways that you can receive that verification code. Does everybody know what I'm talking about with that? So as we progress here with technology, obviously everything is becoming more and more secure. So it'd be the same as when you log into your bank and it doesn't recognize, or, you know, when you log in to do anything, it's saying, oh, we need to really make sure this is you. So really, it's a great security feature that we have. Any questions?
I can tee you up with a few if we need to get them going.
Karen? We have breakout sessions for life events. There'll be lots of information on life events for sure. They must be having so much fun over there. I am so sorry you guys aren't laughing.
So on the forms and communication, I'm relatively new at this. And so I'm trying to keep notes in there of everything. And so like I wanted to upload a death certificate or something like that. And so I reached out and said, hey, how can I do this? And they told me to do it through the forms, but sometimes it'll take it. Sometimes it won't take it. What is the trick to making those upload? I don't know if the file's too big. I don't know if, so I've managed to get some things to upload and some things won't upload.
And you're doing are you doing as a PDF? Like
Yes.
a scan?
Yes.
Without seeing it, I feel like I don't have a good answer for that. I can't imagine a death certificate would be too large of a file.
I mean, Ruthie, are you aware of anything from a limit? Has anybody else had that issue where you've had trouble uploading forms to the forms? Yeah. What I would suggest is when you have an example of that, if we'll put the team on the lookout, and if you'll let us know, and we can troubleshoot that and see what's going on a case by case. So Karen said that she had a similar issue with uploading files, and she shortened the length of the file name, and that solved the problem for her. So that might be one thing that you could do to self troubleshoot that. If you run into an issue though, let us know, because we'd love to know if there's something systemic that we need to work on so that we can solve a bigger problem.
Any other questions?
Lindsay, can you talk about what can the employee do in the site when it's not open enrollment?
Sure. I think Blink's gonna log in and show us some things. So if you guys have self-service year round, like for new hires and stuff like that, employees can go in and access the system and access their benefits and see additional items on there anytime throughout the year. The biggest thing would be the forms library. A lot of you have where you put a lot of information in there. So instead of people calling you and saying, hey, like, is this covered, or who do I call, or what do I do, or how do I make a claim? We house all of those forms in here for you. So you can just say, hey, log into Celerix and you can see the forms library, and that claim form's right there for you. Or the summary of benefits is right there for you. Or the website and the code to see what list of providers are covered. You can go there for that information. So there's tons of information we can add here for you. If you have employment docs, handbooks that you want to put in there, there's lots of different things that we can put in there for you. So that way your employees can view them. Another thing they can do, so like I said before, they can log in and they can change their beneficiary at any time. I'm a big advocate for keeping your beneficiaries up to date. Christine always uses this example, but there's nothing worse than an ex-wife getting. But they can log in. So if they have a divorce, maybe they want to put somebody else as a beneficiary, or maybe, I don't know, want to leave it all to your kids. I don't know. Maybe you're still married. I don't know. But you can go in at any time, select which benefits you want to make updates to as far as the beneficiary, and you can go through and update that. And it'll have a new form for you, and it'll have the new beneficiaries listed on the employment tab for you. They can look at their coverages, and they can't make changes to it, because if they're not in an open enrollment or in a new hire window, then they can't do anything. Another thing, they can update their personal information if you have that where it's allowed. Sometimes, like I said before, we have that blocked, but if they wanted to go in and add, change their address because they moved or add an email address, then they can go in and do that. Another thing I'll touch on, kind of like an intro, self-service life events. We're going to get into that later. Employees can complete some life events on their own. And we'll go through and we'll talk about that, how that works, how that's enabled, and what needs to be done to get that set up for you.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? What if I don't want employees to be able to do self-service life events?
So that is not set up unless you request to have that done. So you can definitely control that for sure. Any questions? You guys got to give me something. They're going to be like, man, must suck over there, Lindsay.
Lindsay, how is life different if I'm working on, for example, a new hire, but it's a rehire versus a truly new employee?
Well, it's really different. Just depends. We do, so manufacturers, we see a lot of hiring, rehiring, layoffs where they come back. How that's entered in the system. Sometimes you may say, well, if they're rehired, then they don't have to go through their waiting period again. Or other times you may say, well, they're rehired, but they actually have to start all over. So we would configure that to best fit your needs on what they can and cannot do, and adding them to the system. But if they're already there, we would basically just complete a life event for rehiring them. And based on what we have configured for your group, it would know what needs to happen next as far as what benefits they should see, when the effective date would be for that, how long they would have to wait. Maybe they get different rates because, I don't know, they're a rehire. I don't know. But yeah, we would definitely configure that for you.
If I terminate an employee and I cover to the end of the month, do I need to use the last day of the month as the termination date?
No, you do not. So we can make your benefits term the date of the event or have it term at the end of the month. And that can be done by each individual coverage. So maybe medical, dental, vision goes to the end of the month, but their voluntary stuff or their basic life, it needs to end the day that they terminate. So you just let us know each benefit, how that works, and we would, we'll have the coverage term accordingly.
What's the best report to run if I want to know who's covered on my plan?
I'm a sucker for the Census Extract, so that would not be, I would say Christine can probably say what her favorite one is.
Information on a specific plan and you want it all to be on one tab.
Yes, ma'am. I didn't hear all of it. Name of employees.
What kind of report would I run if I just needed a list of all employees who had medical insurance by each of our buildings? Like we have 12 buildings.
Payer report has locations, right?
Payer report.
If you have a specific report or like a specific need for something, then, and you don't know what report to run, definitely reach out to us and let us know. And we can tell you, hey, this report right here is going to give you exactly what you need and sometimes a little bit more. We have a lot of times where they want to see, would it be like when you're doing your re-enrollments and seeing rates and stuff like that, they want to know how many people are covered or how many lives they're covered. Definitely reach out and we can get reporting, tell you exactly what to run.
Yeah, we'll get those requests a lot when you're preparing for your renewal. Your broker might ask you for a full census of all employees or maybe all employees that are covered on specific plans. And either the census report or the payer report will be a quick way for you to gather that information to present to them for marketing.
I got this question a lot in the past when we're running the generic payer reports. If you go to that and it says payer up there, a payer is really your company title. So if you see where we have to run multiple file feeds for carriers sometimes, when you have the same carrier for multiple plans, you may see a payer called One America LTD, One America Life. So when you're going through and you're thinking, I want to report for One America Life. If you see that payer there, run that report for that specific payer, and that'll give you the information just for that carrier and that line of coverage. Okay. That's one of the trickier things I think the generic payer report is just knowing what carrier you're trying to run the report for.
I'm going to add to that. If you have a bill that, let's say One America is your voluntary life, basic life, LTD and STD, but you just need LTD and STD, then just let your CSM or your CSM know, hey, I need to be able to run this report for just STD and LTD, and we will create that payer for you that says LTD and STD, and then you can run it for just that. So if you're needing to separate that out, then definitely let us know. I saw Ruthie put her hand up. Do what? Yeah, a lot of you guys probably have the activity report that you're seeing daily, seeing what's going on.
You need to go home or start your last work day, right? You're like, oh, I remember. I don't see that employee on here. I must not have done that this week. When an employee comes to your office at the last second and says, hey, I need to change my benefits, or can you please help me update my address? And you don't see them on that activity report, you didn't get that task done. So it's a good daily reminder for that. I'm going to throw on top of that activity report, a really good report. I hope Lindsay talks about this for maybe a minute. Your birthday reports that you have set up running now that are going to you guys.
Yes, everybody has birthday reports coming from me. You guys get them on the first of the month, right? So you should all have that. If you don't, let me know, but I'm pretty confident everybody has it. But basically what that report is it is going to report back to you on the first of the month, who in that month is going to have a dependent that needs to age off of a coverage. If you have where student status is required, or maybe your dental for dependent just ends at 23, it's going to tell you as of July 22nd, so-and-so's dependent is no longer eligible for the coverage. So on the first of the month, you have a list to know throughout the month, you're going to need to get these life events taken care of and get these dependents removed from the coverage. One thing that I will say, and this is in your user guide, if your dependent ages off the date they turn 26, that is the date that you use when you're entering the life event. If they're allowed to stay on the coverage till the end of the month, then the date that the age limit is attained, I think that's what the box says, you would type in the last day of the month, and that will term coverages how you need to. If you don't have that report running, you may have where you allow dependents to stay on through the entire calendar year. So open enrollment takes care of that on its own for you. So you may not have that. Everybody getting those reports and utilizing those? Right. Suppress blank columns, is that what you said? Like the field isn't, is it blank for everybody? I mean, that's how I would interpret it, right?
If it's a standard report, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Is this,
We may be able to create a custom report for the client.
I think I,
The question was, can we suppress blank columns on reports? And if it's a standard report, we would not be able to do that. But there is the possibility of creating custom reports. It just depends on what that report is used for and how that client is going about using it. I mean, there might be a better report for them, or, maybe they're using a payroll report that we had set up with when they had a different payroll company or something, and now they don't have the use for all the columns. They just need to let us know so that we can see whether or not it's editable.
I wonder if that person's talking about the activity report. I wish they could give you a thumbs up, because if I'm not mistaken, there's a new feature on the parameter. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so there's a new feature. We probably actually need to take some time and go through it. But there's actually a checkbox on the activity report that says remove blank lines. That's correct, Ruthie, right? Yes, so now that they've added that in there, you, instead of, you can put your filters across the top of it and you can filter for different specifics that you're looking for. Whereas before, if you put the filters across the top, it would only show that first person because then you have a blank column and you would need a new set of filters. So we can actually remove that. Is this person giving me a thumbs up virtually or anything like that? If you want to write down who it is, then I'll definitely make sure that we take care of that. But if I had to guess, I would guess that's what it is, because that was one of my pain points with the activity report. So I love when they make updates and make things easier for us. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Well, Susan's gonna get mad at me when I ask this. I can feel her eyes on the back of my head now, but we do open enrollment in October. So January 1, we have a merit increase for almost every employee. Can I do that myself with an upload? Can I send it to Susan to do a mass upload instead of entering that data one person at a time?
Yes, you can, if you're
Send it to
able
her.
to provide us social in the field that you need to have updated and it's mass, then you can definitely provide that to us. We have lots of groups that wait till the beginning of the year. And then that really, it may change some of their benefits. If they have like employer paid long-term disability, we need to recalculate that, right?
Yes.
So we can definitely take care of that. You can send it to us because during the open enrollment, it's going to do whatever they have in
Sure.
October. But we can actually load it and recalculate it automatically for you. So that would be a perfect example of
Yep.
why does the long-term disability not match what their form says? It's
Yep.
exactly what it is, because
That
it's
was
an
my-
off-cycle merit increase that needs to recalculate that.
Yeah, that was my big. Get it away.
What? If you guys have large batches of new hires, teachers, or when you're hiring a bunch of teachers, school systems, provide us that information, we will load it for you. Instead of you having to enter 30, 40, 50 teachers.
Anything you guys are doing in masses, I usually say more than 20, right? So if you have a new location or a pay increase of 1 or 2% across the board, right? Give us a file that has employee social or EIDs, if that's what we have in the field, and then their new salaries. A lot of people, I've seen this a lot recently, where there's been changes to location names or people moving locations. Give us a file of that as well, and we can try to help you out as best as we can for that. We want to try to make your lives a little easier, right? So always, if you have questions, your CSM team is your go-to, right? We say your first line of defense. So if you're working with something, if you're going through the system and you're like, oh, I heard about that payer report, I want to run one. I always used to tell people, you're not going to break the system by practicing running a report. Run all the reports you want. It doesn't break anything. But if you get stuck and you're in the process of doing it and you're getting frustrated because you're on your third attempt and you just can't get what you need, give your CSM a call, a text, an email, and say, this is what I'm looking for. Am I thinking this is the right report? And they'll let you know if that is the right report or not.
Any
other
last questions?
We already have the cowbell going, so. Well, it's good, but I'm sure everyone would like a break.
Curious from the crowd, is there anything that you think is not as easy as it should be, or that gives you consistent headaches consistently?
Don't everybody all at once. Let me get out of here first.
I got Susan. Question from Susan in the back is about timely entering of new hires and the impact that that has.
Or what was
Like,
the second?
How soon do new hires have to be entered? How soon do people have to be terminated when they have a termination date?
I mean, like for mass uploads or just in general?
So most of the time, a new hire is going to have a certain window of when they can enroll. So really the only damage that you're going to do with a new hire, if you don't put them in right away, is that you're just shortening their window to enroll if their hire date is then in the past.
So
That's
if they
the-
were hired on July 1st and you enter them today, that eligibility date and hire date, that 30-day window still starts on July 1st. So they would essentially have 8 days left to log in and enroll. So yeah, keeping that in mind for sure, making sure that you're entering those timely. Yes,
One-
ma'am. Easy.
Let me repeat it first. Yeah. So question is, if I change a carrier or a plan, how difficult is that around renewal time? We just
Easy.
need
We just need the information and we'll get it in there for you for sure.
we need 3 weeks notice with the new rates and renewal decisions is our rule of thumb.
Yeah. Just has to be done timely for sure. So we can make sure that we have it all added correctly, built out correctly, rates are showing correctly, and that we move everybody into that new plan.
Maybe a related question to that would be, let's suppose that I am changing a bunch of carriers at open enrollment time and I've got file feeds running with Anthem and Delta Dental and VSP. And we just changed all that and we're going to use UHC after renewal. From a file feed expectation, like what kind of expectation should I have when there's major changes like that on the file feeds?
Well, depends on when you let us know that you're changing your carrier. If it's a last minute decision, sometimes getting those new file feeds up and running can be out of our control because I get information back from Anthem, UHC, UMR that they need 2 months, 3 months, whatever it might be to set up a file. But usually what we'll be able to do for your initial enrollment is provide them with a spreadsheet that they can upload to get those initial cards sent out to your employees. And then we'll continue working on the file feed with them. So it's helpful to us that you make those decisions as quickly as possible in terms of prior to your enrollment getting started. But we do have those situations that come up where you get a surprise renewal that you weren't expecting and you're having your broker go out to market for you very last minute to determine what those new rates are going to be. So just understand that when that does happen, chances are that file feed's not going to get up and running. Good rule of thumb for a January renewal, if it's late like that, usually the carrier won't let us work on it until February, but we will get a spreadsheet to them to get those initial cards manufactured.
So we're at the end of time now. If we have one last question, we'll take one more.
I'm sorry if I missed the answer, but when we're getting ready to term someone, at what point should we do that? Like as a school system, sometimes we know in January that someone's going to term in May. At what point can we enter that term date?
That's a loaded answer for me. And I think the best example would be, so you could enter it a little early, but I wouldn't enter it too early. And I would say the best example that's ever been given to me by Christine is that, let's say you have Anthem as your carrier and you term them in May with an August term date. That's going to start sending over a termination to Anthem, even though it's in the future. And Anthem doesn't always look at that date. And so they just term. So now you have someone that tries to go to the doctor in June or July, or maybe has a baby, which causes more issues. So I would say not too far in the future. The biggest thing I'll say if you do it, teachers, this is the big thing. They stop working in May, but their benefits are effective till July 31st. If you terminate them in the system, then, and they have a baby or get married in July, if they're already terminated, how are we supposed to go back and say, hey, I had a baby? Because they're not eligible for anything, you basically kind of turned off their employee record. One thing we can't do is put an event in between two other events. So they all have to be sequential. So that's the biggest thing that I would say that I see. Would you agree with that, Christine?
Yeah, we really don't recommend that you do life events too far in advance, including employment terminations. And that's the whole reason. Before we really didn't know until some of that started happening, where we had employees who were going to be terminating at the end of summer and their termination was already keyed in May, and then they got married and needed to add on a new spouse. And we couldn't go back and do that life event without unterminating them first. And so it took quite a few steps in order to be able to do that. So our recommendation is that you wait until the month in which they're going to be terminating before you key those in. And for the most part on the file feeds, the carriers will read the termination date, but we have had situations that have come up where they haven't. And they've gone ahead and termed people immediately. And then that's created an issue as well. So it's usually best not to do those far in advance.
I'm going to add one more thing, Wes, before. If you have where you have the same thing we talked about, where if you need to do salary or new hires, if you have a large number of employees that are terming, then you can send us that information and we can upload it for you. So if you feel like your list is getting longer and longer and longer and you are like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get all this done? Then just supply us with the information and we can terminate. We can do a mass upload of terminations for you as well with the correct date when it gets closer.